It's easier to maneuver a fishing boat than it is a cruise ship.
Here's the tricky part about policy rollout. Once you have a policy that has been adopted by customer service staff, a technician staff, an organization as a whole. Usually you put out a policy and then over time it gets changed. I don't want to say manipulated.
When we were smaller, making course corrections was easier.
I don't want to say like the mistake that we made was that welcome to the Bug Bucks Podcast, a podcast designed to turn you into a bug money millionaire. This episode is brought to you by Bug Bucks Plus, the #1 training and education platform designed to help you build and scale your pest control company. I'm your host, Eric Bassett, and of course, right next to me, Jay Claus. What's up, man?
Eric Bassett, my Bug Bucksers. What's up?
Dude. So, I love the swag.
You like it?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I like yours also.
Thank you very much.
Wow, that looks very nice.
Yeah, if you guys,
where'd you get that?
if you're not watching on YouTube, me and Jake are both wearing some phenomenal Carhartt work shirt hoodies. Dude, these are sweet.
They're legit, right?
Yeah, they are legit.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are part of the swag that we gave away at our company party, which occurred last night.
Last night?
Yeah, dude.
It was great.
It was awesome. This episode is probably going to drop somewhere end of October, beginning of November. Mm-hmm. But, we usually do a company party right at the beginning of October. It's kind of like a end of season Natura birthday party combination.
Yeah, you're right. So, yeah, it is. I guess it is kind of like a birthday party, right?
Yeah.
Natura's birthday. It was cool. We did it at the Claus Manor at our house, and it was great, man. We had tacos and salads and all kinds of stuff, and everybody in the company was there. I think that was a first. Every single person in the company was there, plus families. Mm-hmm. So it was a great time. Eric put together a trivia, and dude, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, dude, yep. Trivia is a good time. MCing trivia is one of my favorite things to do. Yeah. And, we put together some awesome bonus questions that are just total brain.
Well, there was a lot of, I got some constructive criticism.
Shoot.
There was a lot of Taylor Swift and Marvel questions, and I was lost on those. I was no help.
Dude, it's okay. Like some of the nerds in the audience got it. Some of the movie nerds.
Sublimation. That was a
really good one.
That was a good one. Yeah,
that was a crazy one. We'll have to do. One of these days we'll do a Bug Bucks event, and I will put together Bug Bucks trivia, dude.
Oh, that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
We'll do it all based on the podcast.
Yeah.
So the actual loyal listeners can get the answers right.
Oh, you should do that, and also you should ask questions about some of the top contributors.
Oh,
some
yeah.
Of the PCOs in the group that are top contributors.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of the Facebook group.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So I'll throw out my usual disclaimer, the information for you guys.
I set that up for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Of course, we want to remind everybody listening, the best way to receive new episodes is by subscribing to our show on your preferred podcast platform like Apple, YouTube, Audible, or Spotify. If you love the show, please leave us a rating and a review. Make sure to check out our Facebook group, Bug Bucks Plus. That is BUGBUX Plus. We have the owners only group that now has over 4,600 members. So
4.6K.
Yeah, man, hit that 4,600 number recently, which is an awesome achievement.
Yep.
And of course, we also have the Bug Bucks Pest Pros group for the non-owner team members, designed to help them develop in their roles.
Yep, totally.
Yep. So the best way to connect with us is to join the groups. It's also the best way to share your feedback on our show and have your questions highlighted and discussed here on the podcast. So make sure you find us on Facebook and join one of the groups, whichever one fits you.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have a really cool topic that we're going to dive into today.
Yeah. Recent and pertinent.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. And I think kind of the synopsis is, how do you as a PCO implement policy changes that could be very different than what you've been doing before for important reasons. But how do you get your management team on board? How do you get your staff on board? How do you explain the technical details, the reasons behind the change?
Yep.
What does a policy rollout look like if you want really good adoption?
And how? Yep. And then, did you already say how to get the how to get the buy-in from your customers?
Haven't talked about that either. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've got the customer element to it.
Yep.
So it's a multifaceted situation that we've got here. And I think most people probably think, oh, if I see something new in my business, especially if you're a solo operator, right? You're a solo operator, not a big deal. It's pretty much you and the customers, right?
Yeah.
Like
no
it's
big
like,
deal.
I should make a change. Boom. Made a change, new product, new outline, new whatever it is.
Yep.
Get my customers on board and we're good to go. But the bigger the company gets, the more elements you have down the chain. So I'll let you kind of set the stage. You can tell us what the most recent kind of policy change that Natura has gone through.
Yeah.
And then maybe we just share our pro tips from kind of start to finish, what we would suggest when it comes to identifying policy change and implementing it.
Yeah. And we could talk about the technical aspect too, because I think
100%.
that that's going to be a really important detail for a lot of PCOs that are, wanting to understand the science and implement science-based pest control a little bit more.
You bet.
Yeah. So, Eric said it right. When we were smaller, making course corrections was easier. I heard it somewhere. Someone said that it's easier to maneuver a fishing boat than it is a cruise ship.
Yep.
So the bigger your company gets, the more strategic and planned you have to be with turning that ship or making corrections. So, all right. So here's the rundown. So what happened was we started noticing that we were getting a lot of reservice calls for box elder bugs. And so we're one of those companies that still does no cost or no additional cost reservices. It's part of the guarantee. So we're getting all these calls for box elder bugs and stink bugs. So when I say box elder bugs, I mean also stink bugs, because that's a big thing.
Yeah, we'll put them in the seasonal fall spring beetle category.
Yeah, even though they're not beetles. Right?
Yeah.
Yes,
yep.
they're hemiptera, which is the true bugs, and that's, I think, a really corny small detail that nobody freaking cares about, right? But they're not coleopterans; they're hemipterans, which is true bugs versus beetles. So that's the nerd coming at me, right?
Jake's nerd moment.
Yeah, and Eric knows all that too. So
you'll loop me into the nerd group there.
Yeah. We're both nerds. I'm a nerd in one way. Eric is a nerd in that same way, but also in a different way.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the problem. Here's the rub. So we're getting all these calls for box elder bug treatments. It has traditionally and typically been part of our reservice guarantee. So, however, treating for box elder bugs specifically is a much more in-depth and complicated service, and maybe we'll talk about that in a minute here. But it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more time consuming.
More products.
We'll say resource heavy.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're talking about technician time. You're talking about product. You're talking about knowledge and training and skill. Right. So we're doing all of these services, and a box elder bug retreatment takes about as much time as almost 2 full quarterly services. So you can see where we're going with this, right? We're doing a double service and not charging for it.
Well, and I want to point out too that, depending on the market that you operate in, box elder bugs are all over the place, right? There are lots of different markets. And if you're in a market that doesn't really deal with, like, you don't have a whole lot of the older deciduous trees and a lot of vegetation, you probably still have box elder bugs. And maybe they every now and again get pretty prolific, right? But maybe it's not that bad. If you are in a market that has a lot of older trees, like big elms and oaks and other things, and even pine trees and other stuff, I mean, all of a sudden your customer is calling and they have thousands. And when they say thousands, they're not underestimating.
Literally thousands.
Yeah, literally thousands of box elder bugs that are just hatching and growing and developing in these trees as they feed on the seeds. And then they, kind of glide, whatever. They don't always fly, but
lighting, I believe, is
there. You go.
Yeah, they're lighting insects.
They end up on the house, right? And then they continue to perpetuate that life cycle in inconvenient areas. So when you guys might be listening and thinking, man, box elder bugs in my area aren't that bad. Like, are you talking about these reservices that take 2 hours? What the heck's your problem, right? I can't tell you. We'll have to take some pictures and video of some of these really bad box elder bug scenarios because it is wild.
Yeah.
Like more time than cockroach treatments.
It's a true pest issue, and for the customer, it's a true pest emergency, right?
Yes.
Because now their house is freaking covered in them, and this is the time of year, mid-September to mid-October.
Yeah.
Because the box elder bug life cycle is 2 months. Or that's their maturity to egg laying, right? Is 2 months. Each female can lay up to 250 eggs. So they get started in the spring, and then they're proliferating throughout the summer, and then by the time you reach the fall, it's like endemic levels, right? So that's the rub, is that we're doing free retreatments for a service that takes twice as long as a regular, like, general quarterly pest control service.
Yeah.
So that's the one side, and the other side obviously is lost opportunity cost. Because instead of doing regular quarterlies that you're getting paid for, now you're doing these free services. So it's like a double-sided sword. You're losing money on both sides. So that's the issue that we're facing on the box elder bug, just on the pest side. So on the office side, the office was, okay. So Eric, you take over.
So, and here's the tricky part about any kind of policy rollout, right? So once you have a policy that has been adopted by customer service staff, a technician staff, an organization as a whole, right?
And it's based on oftentimes just tradition.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing is
tradition.
Yeah, depending on like how closely that policy is followed, right? Because usually you put out a policy, and then over time it gets changed. It gets, I don't want to say manipulated, but it just gets moved and designed in a way that's a little bit more comfortable, right? So you might say, hey, never do a free reservice for this, and then over time you see a few of them or whatever the situation is. And what happened for us is we had an idea of what the reservices were supposed to be like for box elder bugs, right? And it was, hey, in a typical environment with box elder bug activity, they are an approved pest on our general pest side. We'll put it in our warranty, no big deal. And our general manager, Aaron, and he did a great job kind of keeping an eye on what these reservices started to look like.
Yeah.
And so he comes into the office and he says, hey, I'm noticing that, we're really struggling with box elder bug treatments, and I've made some changes to see what we have to do in order to get on top of it. And it includes all this extra time, all this extra resources, extra product, extra stuff, right? And as an ownership team, we're thinking, number one, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Number two, there's no way that that's sustainable within our typical general pest plan and our warranty, right? And so, he's ahead of the game, and he says, hey, I really think we need to start charging for these types of treatments, right? And this is where the rollout of policy change gets tricky, okay? Because what he's trying to communicate is, hey, we need to create and execute on a new type of treatment for customers who have very bad box elder bug problems.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. These
particular kind of customers who have thousands of box elder bugs, we need to create a box elder bug plus plan or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And there's going to be a typical cost that comes along with it that is commensurate with the work that we're doing.
Absolutely.
That's a very simple policy in my book, right?
Yeah. And as a business owner, it makes sense that if we're going to be spending the time, we need to be compensated for it.
Yes.
But like Eric said, when you have a policy like a free reservice, right? And then and this probably happens in any company that has CSRs. As you have customers that are maybe upset or pushing really hard or maybe noisier than other customers, and you have a policy such as a free reservice policy, then the parameters can get stretched.
Yes.
Right. Until all of a sudden, like, I mean, on the extreme side, and this has never happened, but on the extreme side, you're doing free bed bug services or something.
No,
right?
yeah, but and you could I've seen issues with bed bug protocol stuff before. And in this situation, what ended up happening is you have an office staff who is really great. I love our office staff. And one of the things that they do really well is that they advocate for the customer a lot, right? And we teach them to do that. We say, hey, I need you to be an advocate for the customer, right? Yeah. I want to make sure that the customer trusts you and that you have the best, thing in mind for them. So when you roll out a policy, I don't want to say like the mistake that we made, but one of the rub that we ran into was that how they heard the policy change was, hey, we're losing money on box elder bug treatments. We're going to start charging for it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right when you say it, you can notice the conflict there.
Yeah.
Because what they've spent the last who knows how many years doing is not only telling customers, hey, don't worry, box elder bugs are included. It's not a problem.
We got
I'm
you
happy
back.
to take care of you. Right. And they've been selling new clients on the same thing. Right. So it's like, hey, yeah, it's free. It's included. It's no problem. And so the communication there, and this is kind of maybe our first pro tip, is understanding exactly what you're rolling out and making sure that it's communicated in the proper way across the board, right? So instead of saying something like, hey, we're just going to start charging for this service, it's, hey, the service that we've been providing is falling drastically short of our standards, right? We're going to create this new process, this new service for customers that have this specific type of pest problem.
Right.
Right. And we're going to charge, commensurate with what the work is going to be done. Yeah. Right. For typical customers, everything still applies. Right. Not a problem. The customers you've been selling, they're fine.
Yeah.
For these new customers in these new situations, this is what we're going to be doing. Yeah. Right. And so making sure that you have full understanding on a management level, right? Because it's got to come from the top down. Yep. So you have, usually the owners, the innovators of the company, right? You have the early adopters, which are the management team. And then, your staff is going to break up into the early majority, late majority, and the laggards on policy adoption. Yep. Right? Just like the law of diffusion of innovation.
Yeah. Okay. You guys all got that? Okay.
Eric, we'll dive into that later.
Maybe you need to put it out on the whiteboard. We should have a whiteboard.
We should have a whiteboard. That'd be really cool. But the idea...
You guys all know that Eric's nickname is Whiteboard, right? Yeah. Eric Whiteboard Bassett.
There we go. The idea there is that as you travel through these different groups of people with policy adoption, is that one group will influence the next,
Correct.
Right? And you're trying to
trickle down.
Yeah, trickle down effect. And you're trying to sell and make sure that each group understands what the policy is in accordance with how it benefits them and why they should adopt it, right? So if you just go through a policy change and you say, hey, we're doing this is new, follow the rules, well, you don't really have true adoption there, right? You have to have buy-in. Yeah. So that's kind of the first tip that I would say is be clear on the changes that you're making, why you're making those changes, and why it's important for not just the company, but why that's also important for the customer, the technician, the CSR, and everybody involved.
Well, yeah. So this the reason why we're bringing this up and making this a topic on the podcast is because this is such a multifaceted situation that we dealt with this week. And so today's Friday. That's when we're recording this episode, Friday the 11th of October. And it was last Friday that we had our first communication with the office. And to the office staff's credit, this was something that was very difficult for them to adopt because they felt on a personal level that rolling this out to our customer base in the season where they're calling in saying, "Oh my gosh, my house is inundated with box elder bugs. I know that this is included. Please help me." Right. So what happened was we rolled out this policy, and immediately it was not received well.
There was some resistance.
There was some resistance, right? And so I went in for what I thought was going to be a quick training on box elder bugs last Friday, and it turned into a 2.5 hour long discussion. And Eric was, unfortunately, because this is the kind of conversation that Eric really shines in, but so does Jana, fortunately. And so I'm sitting there and, I'm trying to listen to everything that everybody's saying. So Jana and I end up having this 2-hour long conversation with the office staff. In fact, it was almost 3 hours. It was a long conversation. And so, so we kind of smooth things out. And then this week, then we had, plenty of conversations. And so this is a multifaceted thing. On the one hand, there's the logistical business problem of losing money and having a big hole in the bucket. On the other hand, or on the other side, you have office staff that are having a hard time adopting this thing.
Yep.
And then on the other side of that coin, this is a 3-sided coin that we're talking about here. You have it's an Anunnaki coin. Maybe the Anunnaki is 3-sided coins. So on the other side, you have like the actual service related issue where there's a complication on a scientific level on the pest control side of the issue. So so what we had to do this week was we had to address all of those things, and it was a process. Yeah. And we had to be patient. We had to do a lot of like thinking and preparation and training. And so one of the things that was really helpful was, first of all, educating, because this is a customer at the end of the day, this is a customer education thing. And we've done so many episodes on it, because if you can't convince, or if you can't, I guess, convince.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't get your customer to buy in to the services that are being sold, you're going to struggle all year.
Yeah. It's going to be a lose-lose. So that's what we've been dealing with this week. So one of the things that I had to do, or that we had to do, was do a training on box elder bugs, like the problem with box elder bugs. And so what I did was I put together a keynote presentation. And it was a short presentation for me. Normally my keynote presentations are like ridiculously long, right? People be like, yeah, we need a 10-minute thing. I'm like, 10 minutes on keynote? That's like half a slide, right? So I put together this thing, and basically we sat down and I explained to the staff, okay, here's the issue with box elder bugs. First of all, box elder bugs are, they're one of those undulating pests. Some years they're worse than others, and some years they're on like a biblical scale, right? And this year and a couple of years ago, that's how it was, a biblical scale. And then the other thing is that the brown marmorated stink bug is an invasive species. It only showed up about 12 years ago here in the Northwest, maybe 15 years max. But I remember when we first started the company, the Columbian, the newspaper here, did an article on this invasive species that hadn't really been around before. But now, 12 or 13 years later, they're everywhere because they proliferate super fast. There's no natural predators. And so you have this huge stink bug problem. So when customers call in and say, I've never had this problem before. I've been with you guys for 6 years and I've never had this problem before. Well, okay, let me explain something. The reason why you haven't had this problem before is because, as strange as it may sound, they haven't, like 6 years ago was just kind of in the middle of their cycle. So we had to explain, look, the problem is that you have this bug that proliferates like crazy. It was the perfect storm conditions for them to proliferate this year. And on top of that, they're a lighting insect or a flying insect. And they breed in off-site locations, like in trees and shrubbery and tree canopies and behind bark and, all this other stuff. So there's a few issues. Number one, in order to kill this bug, they have to land on the product that we've applied.
Yeah, we're not fogging the whole property here.
Right, and we're not putting a force field biodome over the structure to protect it, right? So one way that we had to explain it was like this, and it was actually pretty simple way to explain it. So let's say that your box elder bug population is 1,000 bugs.
Sure.
Okay, just even though it's probably 100 times that, right? Let's say your box elder bug problem is it's 1,000 box elder bugs, and let's say that those 1,000 bugs are in 5 or 6 or more different life cycle stages.
Yes.
Let's say that they're in 10 life cycle stages. Okay. So when we do a treatment on the house, let's say we do a broadcast treatment on the house on the south and the east sides where it's the sunniest, where you're going to see the most box elder bugs. The product is there, and the product has a residual life of 75 to 90 days.
Gotcha.
So let's say we do a service in May, June, July, and then you do another one in August, September, October, right? So we do 2 of these treatments twice a year, once in the spring and then once in the late summer. So you have these 10 waves of bugs. Now, each wave of bugs has to come in contact with the product in order to die.
Yeah, at the time when they're most likely to come in contact with it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep. And so they come in, and let's say it's 10% is the first wave, and then 10%, and then, well, it's actually probably more like 10%, and then 20%, and then 40%. Because
you don't even, and we're not even talking about the actual specific instar stages that these insects have, right? It's just the fact that across the board, if we even just divide it up into 10, right? Like, they're not all laying eggs exactly at the same moment. Right? They're not all hitting a certain instar stage exactly at the same time. So it's like...
They're like humans. It's like you can have grandpas that are 40 all the way up to 105 or whatever,
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, so we had to do that training, and it made a lot of sense to them. They have to land on the product, and then what if the customer calls back and says that they're not dying? Okay, well that's actually our responsibility to educate the customer that product is going to be there for 75 to 90 days, and the bug has to land on it in order to die.
Yep.
And then there's this saying in pest control. This is in order to be a responsible PCO, that more spray doesn't make the bugs more dead.
Yes.
Right. So us coming out to treat the house again is not going to prevent the bugs that are in the canopies from landing on the house.
Right.
So there's that whole thing. And then, the ultimate goal of doing box elder bug and stink bug treatments is to prevent them from overwintering. So that's the real problem. I mean, that's ultimately what you're trying to solve. Is because when they overwinter, the first warm day of the winter, you get a day. Well, here in the Northwest, you can have a day in late January where it's 50 degrees or 55 degrees, just boom, out of nowhere. And then the next week it snows 6 inches. It's weird. So the bugs take their biological cue from the walls and the ceiling, the roof warming up. And then all of a sudden, poof, they pop out inside the house. And so you get customers freaking out. Oh my gosh, I got box elder bugs all over the inside of my house. Come spray. Well, what are we supposed to spray? Because in 24 hours, without a food source and a place to re-nest, those box elder bugs are dead inside the house. They're not going anywhere. Also, where are we going to spray? Inside the walls where they're nesting, right? So it's like this
all the cracks and crevices that you can ever imagine,
right? Yeah, we're going to tent the house for box elder bugs.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to get the office staff to really grasp, is that ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the number of the population of box elder bugs that are overwintering inside the structure of the house and emerging in the spring.
Yep.
And B, the secondary thing is to reduce the overall populations of box elder bugs that are landing on the house in the summer and fall. Yep. But let's keep our eyes on the prize. It's that springtime reemergence that we're trying to control. So we have this whole conversation, this whole training with the office staff, which was another 2-hour long training. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, do you guys have any questions about how all this works? And they were all like, oh my gosh, like that makes perfect sense. So a big part, the reason why I'm saying all of this is because like a major part of getting the buy-in from your office staff, and in order for your office staff to get the buy-in from the customer, they have to be educated.
Yes.
Customer service is not just teaching how to sell and retain and reschedule services, right? It's about education. If you have an office staff that is not educated on pest issues and pest behaviors and proper and successful pest control measures, your customer service rollout is never going to be successful.
Yeah, and it's from a logistic perspective, you know, and we're short on time, which this is.
Oh crap! I took up all the time.
That's story. Okay, because that was really important. That's a really important part. You know, we might have to come back to this at some point and kind of rehash this out, but maybe a little bit in synopsis from some pro tips from us. Okay, so one of the other issues we ran into was timing. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to be able to, as a PCO, look into the future and think, okay, within the next quarter, what are the pest issues I'm going to run into, right? Do my policies and procedures for those particular pest issues and pest pressures line up for what I think is best for my business, right? If we were just a little bit closer, and again, Aaron did a really good job here, credit to him, because he was working on this in advance. He did bring this to our attention. We just didn't get the rollout of the policy fast enough. And the problem is that if you prepare a team, if you prepare a staff and say, listen, you guys know that this thing's coming up in the next couple months. Just want to let you know this is some of our thoughts on it. We want to make some policy changes. You give them time to accept the change, right? And then you give them time to do the educational piece, right? Which does take hours. And what's funny is the rollout of a policy change, and again, the bigger the ship, the more work there is to do. You can spend hours, and you probably will spend hours on the prep, on the educational piece, on the actual policy, on educating everybody on it, on getting it all rolled out. You're probably going to spend hours on this anyway. If you do it wrong, what you do is end up spending hours trying to like grasp for trust and get everybody on board.
And then there's the emotional equity.
Yes. So I guess first thing is timing, right? Look into the future. Second thing is let your managers know, let the management team know that you are looking at this particular policy change, and then dive into the reasons behind it, right? Make sure that you're all clear on all the details and what the, not just what the changes are, but what the reasons are, so that when they go back to their teams and they roll out these changes, they're explaining it in the same way that you explained it to them, right? You have clear communication from the top down. And then after that is all about execution and evaluation, right? So you have to have somebody within those departments, typically the managers, right, who are going to make sure that the new policy is executed on. Because even if you have a really good rollout, you have good adoption, they understand what the policy is, it's very clear. Change is in itself hard. So you have to make sure that the change gets executed on, and then you have to have a manager who's there to evaluate the execution and also the impact it has on customers, right? You have to be prepared. Okay, we just made a policy change, assuming that everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. What impact did it have on our sales? What impact does it have on our customer service, our reservice rate cancellations, et cetera, et cetera?
And your customers, if you have the proper preparation, your customers will get on board with just about anything. So, with this, and then I'll just say this, then we can wrap up. But, rolling it out slowly and with multiple communications to the customer is really the key, So we roll out, like we send out an email or communication, whatever. Hey, customer, we're so glad that you love our service and we love you. Something that we've noticed is blah, 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 blah. So as a result, we have to blah, 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 blah. And you send that out a few times so that by the time it's rolled out, first of all, your staff feels like, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing the right thing, right? They feel good and confident about it. But your customer is educated. So, like Eric is saying, in order to steer your big ship or your little ship, getting your staff behind it is key, because in order to get your customers behind it, you got to get your staff behind it.
100%.
So,
Awesome, dude. Well, this has been a great episode. And again, I feel like we're barely scratching the surface on some of this stuff. But it's a really good conversation. And hopefully, it helps some of you guys out there if you're trying to make some policy changes or trying to implement any new things in your business, which I feel like we all are every single year.
Yep.
So it should be pretty applicable. We appreciate you guys taking the time to listen in. If you have a coworker, a manager, or an owner who could benefit from listening to this episode, the best way to say thank you to us is to share this episode with them. If you haven't joined the Facebook groups yet, go find the groups and join. It's BugBucks Plus. Lots of information and great connections there. And if you have a topic you want discussed on the show, drop it in the group. As always, this episode is brought to you by BugBucks Plus, the #1 training and education platform designed to help you build and scale your pest control company. Visit bugbucksplus.com to sign up and start building today.
And hit the subscribe button.
Thanks again for listening in, and until next time, keep building those pest control companies.
You're listening to the Bug Bucks Podcast, hosted by Eric Bassett and Jake Claus.